Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
And here we are, 171. It's been a while. Feels like we haven't done a show in a while, but you know, life tends to take over sometimes, and we're going to have Karen and Rob come on and do a little show that they got together and did about a week ago now, coming up with Karen's ride that she has, and it's actually going to be a two-parter, so you're going to get part one tonight where they talk about basically the ride, and the question that's going to come up is, we've done a show on this before, is basically the why. You know, why do you want to do this? If you've heard Karen on the show before, she's a very competitive person, and this ride is basically a ride. And so what interests me about that is how does a competitive person deal with something that's really not a competition? Since we've gotten together before, you know, I've had two races, and first ones in a while. I didn't even realize that I had not raced since St. Anthony's last April. Oh, there's a siren, so they found me. And so entering January, you know, with having to get rid of Disney due to a foot. I know you can hear that siren, right? Real life, live podcasting at its best. Had a couple of races, like I said, so a short 5K trail run that I did better than I thought I did. I do need to get better at it, and I've been doing a lot of running on pavement, and I need to get back out on the trails a little bit. And then yesterday I had basically an endurance run, which was a 6 or a 12 hour. I signed up for the 12 hour knowing damn well I was going to be able to last 12 hours, but just wanted to see how I did. It's a race I've done 3 years in a row now, so I really like it up there. It's a free race. You just give a donation when you get there. And managed to eke out 19 miles, but still having that same foot issue rear its head about 7-8 miles in. Managed to get through it, so that's the difference right now, is that I managed to get through it, but it's concerning that keeps popping up. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the why again, and basically how to, I keep saying basically, I'm sorry about that, how to get to the real purpose of what you're doing. We've had a recent Super Bowl, and as an avid Dolphin fan, I am also, it comes to, you know, it just comes with the territory that if you're an avid Dolphin fan, you have to be an avid Patriot hater. But you have to, you know, kind of give it to them, you know, that, you know, to keep winning all the time. It's like, yeah, it gets old after a while. He's like, yeah, it's, you know, the Patriots every year. But he said, Bill Belichick says something in his interviews all the time, and it kind of struck home to me when looking up this, looking into the essentials and the whys and things like that. And whenever they ask him about a loss, which is rare, but when they ask him about a loss, his point is that, well, they were better than us today. We worry about, you know, it's over now, so we worry about the next team. And I'm sorry, I get into football, but Julian Edelman was the MVP, and he kind of said it after in the interview after the Super Bowl, is that they asked him about next year, and he said, well, I'm not even thinking about next year. I'm just thinking about, you know, getting back to training camp and starting the next season. And that's essentially what the why is. I think as a human race, we tend to focus too much on the goal. So we have a goal of the Disney Marathon, or we have a goal of Infinitus, or we have a goal of this. And we focus so much on the goal that we forget about the steps in between. And really, the focus should be on the steps in between. It's the system, not the goal. And I think the reason the Patriots do so well is that they focus on the system. And their core value is that if you focus on the system and the steps to get to do the system right and do it right every time, the goal takes care of itself. So if you have a training plan and you have to do these miles, or these training sessions every day or every other day or whatever it is, when you get to the race, it's going to take care of itself. So the goal in the race is not really that important. It's every day doing the right thing every day. They call it the Patriot way, and I like to see a few other teams have figured that out. I think the Rams have figured that out, and I think the Dolphins maybe hopefully have finally figured that out by hiring away a bunch of Patriot people. But it comes down to 5 essential questions. And in the business world, if you know what Six Sigma is, I'm Six Sigma type, and one of the tools that we use is the 5 whys, is that you ask why 5 times, and eventually you get down to the root cause. It's very rarely what you think it is. When I say I'm running to be healthy, well, that's kind of the goal. The goal is to be healthy. So what why do you want to be healthy? And you ask, and the trick is to ask why 5 times, and eventually you get down to what the core is. And it's usually not what you really think it is. I kind of alluded to it, I think probably in the last show, is that when people are asked what's most important to them, there's always the generic answers that everybody says: family, health, church, kids, things like that. But then when you look at their actions, it's not really what they're doing. You are what you do. You aren't what you say you are. You are what you do. You can say you're not a racist all the time, but if you're riding around with a Confederate flag in your car, well, that's your action. Then the action defines you. So, you can, say what you want, but, people are going to look at what you're doing to who you are. So I think I said the last time, if you say your family is the most important thing to you, but you're working 80 hours a week at work, well, is it really then? I mean, what really is what's most important to you? We got into a little discussion online about that when I made a statement like that, and they said, well, it is most important because you're working all the hours now, so you have time to retire early and spend time with your family later in life. And I said, well, but your kids aren't going to be 5 years old in 20 years when you retire. Your kids are going to be grown, and you've missed all that time with them because you've been working so hard. And who's to say you're going to live to retirement? Who's going to say that you're going to live much after you retire? The thing is to kind of really live what you say is most important. And if you say family is most important, you shouldn't be spending your time at work. If you're saying your health is most important, you shouldn't be eating at McDonald's, and you shouldn't be eating, bags of potato chips and drinking soda and things like that. It's really not what's the most important. So when you're looking at what your goal is, the key is to be honest with yourself. Everybody answers the questions like that, like they think people want to hear it, but they're rarely being honest about it. So, I mean, I think I want to get into a long ramble about this, but it's basically 5 essential questions. And the first one is you ask why 5 times. I want to blank because blank. For example, I want to run a 10K because it will help me get into shape. But then you start digging down. I want to get into shape because I don't have enough energy to be productive at work. I want to be productive at work because it's important to provide for my family. I want to provide for my family because being a great parent is rewarding. I want to be an amazing parent because I believe it's leading to a good life. So now you've kind of dug down to it. The digger deep, the more you learn about yourself and about why and what really matters to you. And it's not even about motivation, because your motivation wavers, but the why doesn't waver. Your end goal should never waver. So there are going to be days that you don't want to do something, and that's fine. That's human nature as well. But the motivation tends to be the one that wavers. So the second thing is like, what excites you to get out of bed in the morning, and what keeps you up at night? And this was way back in the day. I said something about my coach at the time asking me, well, what are you excited about? What are you passionate about, John? And I couldn't answer it. I mean, there's really nothing sprung to mind, as sad as that sounds. And I think what it comes down, instead of focusing on things you think you should do, you ask yourself, what do you want to do? What would excite you doing? And really finding that answer. I mean, we all have real life. We all have to work. We all have to, take care of our families and pay bills and pay taxes and things like that. But if you take everything out of it, and I asked somebody at work the other day, it's like, if money was no object, what would you be doing what you do now? And the trick is, and I know it's harder than it sounds, but the trick is to find that thing that I would do this for free if I could. And that's always the hardest thing. And the older you get, the harder it is to get out of that. Maybe instead of a new gym membership, it's enrolling in a dance class. Maybe it's running on the trails instead of treadmills. Inevitably, when I get a client who states that they hate running, and you start digging, you start asking those 5 whys. Well, why do you hate running? It's such a weird thing to say to me because, running sucks and it hurts, especially if you're heavy like me. But why do you hate it? And then when you dig in, it's usually because, well, all their running's done on treadmills. And it's my personal belief, and I know people love treadmills and they use treadmills and there's reasons for treadmills. I think treadmills kills runners. And it takes away the joy of running to me. Doing a treadmill workout is a chore, but telling me to go out and run in the woods is not a chore to me. Yeah, sometimes it's a pain to get up in the morning and get out there, but once you're out there, it's fun. I've never run on a treadmill and had fun. So I know I might get blowback on that, but that's just to me. You have to think about what sentence will come to define your life. We all want to do it all. And at times, our hope and dreams knows no bounds. But the problem with wanting to do it all is that we end up lacking focus and fail to set priorities. So the focus is essential. If you try to have it all, you usually end up with nothing. So you can't have everything. You can't have a good family life and have a good work life. I said that wrong, but what I mean is you can't spend 80 hours a week at work and still have a productive family life. It doesn't work that way. You can't expect to do everything. You can't expect to spend 5-6 days training for an Ironman, work 8 hours a week, and still spend time with your family. It's not all going to be. So the priorities have to change. Yeah, you can still do Ironmans. You can still do ultra runs. You can still do that, have productive family and work. But you may not be putting the time in that a professional does, and that's fine. You're not a professional. So professionals get paid to do that. You're not. We're not. And also the fourth thing is kind of, what will people say about you at your 80th birthday? And I talked about this with friends in the past, and I think what it comes down, at least for me, what comes down to, I want people to remember me for making a difference somehow. It doesn't have to be a big difference. Even, the whole adage that, if you just help one person, that's good. You've helped one person. I think you really need to try to figure out how people are going to think of you when you're gone. None of us are going to live forever, as much as we'd like to, or much as, so. And I also think, the fifth thing, who do you want to be? The grizzled dream. Often it's not reaching our goals that matters, but who we become in the process. And I really think when you're talking about races and events, it's not about the race. It's about what it took to get to the race. It's about self-discipline and dedication and determination, and about seeing something through to the end. I remember talking to my uncle a long time ago, and I asked him, he was high up in a company at that time, and I asked him, and this was when I was still working on my degree, so I said, does it really matter if you have a degree in something? Why does it matter? And his answer to that was that because it shows that you can finish something. It's not really, just because you have a college degree doesn't make you smarter than the person that doesn't, but it shows that you started something and you finished it. And he says that's always a good trait to see. If someone's gone to school for doctors, for example, or, they go to school for years and years and years and years, and they take board exams, they take all this stuff, it takes years to become a doctor. And if you see that through to the end, you're naturally, it's kind of like what I said at the beginning, if you go through all those steps, you're going to be a doctor, and you're probably going to be a lot smarter by the end of it because you've put in all the steps. And I mean, that's how he always looked at it, and like I said before, also, our actions define us. Being active is one of those actions. We can give all, the flowery specifics we want in the end, but in the end, it's about what we do and not what we say. So I think that's the takeaway maybe from this is that, show people who you are. Don't tell people who you are. And show people that you want to do things. Don't just tell people you want to do things. I think in the age of social media, we all do this, and I do it, and everybody does it. We tell people what we did. We do this and do this, and we put stuff out there. But, in the end, what's important is that it shows like consistency, and you're doing it all the time. I got asked in the Facebook group there. Everybody posts their stuff. And on some, I know this is going to sound silly, but bear with me. On some, I'll put the thumbs up, and others, I'll put the heart. And it has nothing to do with who the person is. Amanda Henry goes out there every day. Every day she's out there 9 miles. Christine Cox, every day out there. They get hearts from me because they are showing consistency. They are living the life that they find important, and they're not out there trying to get others to do it. They're doing it for themselves. So those are, and that's what the thing is. And it's not making them more important than anybody else, but it sets it apart. It has nothing to do with any personal feelings, but it has to do with the consistency. And that's what I like to see is that consistent, every day out there on the roads doing what they need to do. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Rob and his conversation with Karen. And we always like having Rob and Karen on. So I will see you next week. Bye.
Ready to start your journey? Whether it's your first workout or you are a seasoned athlete, Endurance for Everyone Coaching wants to work with you. Our coaching team has worked with athletes from beginners to USAT national qualifiers and are comprised of experienced runners, cyclists, and triathletes who have a passion for healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And let's get started.
Hey guys, it's Rob coming back at you with another show. On the other end, I have a very familiar voice, Karen Clark. Karen, want to say hi?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Now, if you're reading the title, you'll get an idea what this show is going to be about. Karen, do you want to tell them what the show is going to be about, or do you want me to go through and say it?
Why don't I do that, seeing as people, if anyone's listened to me on the show before, they probably think we're going to talk about ultra running. Rob, what do you think?
That's usually all we ever talk about.
It is, and it's usually all I ever think about. But this one is a little bit different. So, I've had a lot of health stuff going on, and I've really been looking at different goals, and it's my husband, Lloyd, and my 30th wedding anniversary this year. And
Congratulations.
yeah, I know, 30 years, right? Man, we're getting old. Anyways, we've been thinking and like tossing around a whole bunch of ideas. We thought about doing a big hike out west and like a whole bunch of things. But with everything that's going on, none of those things were feeling that exciting. They were feeling more like a grind, than they were something we would look forward to. So you had talked and done a show a few months ago now, I guess, middle of last year. I don't even remember when it
It,
was.
yeah,
About,
it was around May that we did it, so it'd be around May, June of last year.
yeah. And that planted this little seed of cycling more as like an endurance or something kind of fun to do on a vacation over a number of days, as opposed to cycling as part of a race, or part of a triathlon.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's kind of been hovering in the back of my mind for a while. And I mentioned it to Lloyd when I got back from New Zealand recently and kind of said to him, how about we do the Gap Trail? It'll end up being probably, if we time it right, about 6 weeks after I finish 2 years of cancer treatment, so I'll have some time to recover. It'll be a little bit different. We've got some flexibility about how we do it and how long it takes. So he was all over it. Like he was so excited about the idea. So after I thought about that, the very next thing I did was send you a text.
Yep.
Like, Rob, help.
I got a crazy idea. What do I do?
Yeah, that's right. I know you did this. And of course, I don't do anything in small doses, right? Like when I wanted to run an ultra, I wanted to do a 100-mile race. So I'm thinking we're going to go from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., and then back home because we live in Pittsburgh. So I don't know. How far is that, Rob? Like
A
just under
long way. I
700 miles?
believe I'm going to say 700 end to end. I don't know if you just said that because I think the trail, there's three different measurements. You can look at the gap, which is the Great Allegheny Passage. Then there's the C&O towpath, which is basically that's gap is to Cumberland, Cumberland to DC. But there's also like a little, I'm going to say tail or trail where they actually kind of say to mile zero or there's a little extra. I don't know where that ends. Like if it's at a monument, downtown, the ocean. I don't necessarily know where the actual quote end is, but there's a couple of different measurements based on that. 350 is a safe guess. One way, round trip, 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Great, what's it called? The Great Allegheny Passageway actually
Yes.
goes really close to where we live in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh. So it goes through a place called the Waterfront, which is literally a 10-minute drive from our home. So I haven't planned out yet how this will go. We just know that we don't want to rush. We want to make sure that we can physically do it without being exhausted. But our first thought is we would just on one day we would go from our house, go down to the waterfront, cycle into downtown where the trail starts, and try and cycle back home. So we would get that little bit done twice, and then we would just head out towards Cumberland all the way to Washington, D.C., and then come back home. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yes.
So that's the plan. It all looks good on paper. So now we get to, okay, so now how do I do this? I have an old mountain bike that I brought over 20 years ago that honestly, I'm not exaggerating, I have not even sat on since I came to this country, and that's been 18 years. So I am not a cyclist. So that's the ground zero starting point.
Okay. Now, what you and I talked a little how do you say, pre-roll off mic, just texting, calling, and such. And the way I saw this breaking down is there's two or three different topics of conversation, and I thought you and I today are going to we're going to go through a little bit of just like, and it does kind of tie together, gear, maybe a little bit of training, okay, and then there's the whole actual planning, mile by mile, day by day, how the length of the trip and so forth. And I think you and I today we're going to go through gear, bike, like I said, what you have, what you're looking for, what do you need, what don't you need, and some of that expectations, and then like some of the training that could be involved with it, and then the follow-up conversation, another show potentially about actually going and the trip and so forth. So is that a decent expectation set to go through today?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And when we first talked, and I mentioned it to John, when I first started talking to Lloyd, I thought, it could be interesting for everybody to really get like a 101 basic, I don't know, I guess just basic information on cycling generally, like not from people who cycle and not from triathletes, but just looking at something that's more of an adventure and a fun thing to do, rather than a race. So a lot of this for me is about what do I really need as opposed to, what would be nice to have, because
Yep.
I'm not a cyclist. So I might do this trail and I might never get on my bike again. So
Yep.
I don't want to invest $10,000, in a whole bunch of stuff that'll just sit in the garage once we're done.
If I could pull a Rob, which everybody knows where this is going, stories about me that have nothing to do with this.
What's in your garage, Rob?
Oh, a ton of stuff. But no, I'll say it this way. I felt the same way whenever I was starting hiking. And I've done a 2 or 3, and you've heard me talk about it. I've done the Laurel Highlands Trail. I've also done the West Rim Trail up, north of us, PA Grand Canyon, whatever you call it. And I'm not saying like I take pride in doing something epic with substandard gear, because they make things for a purpose. So 2 parts in life as I've been coming to more recently, and that is anything I do, if I try to have less, ironically, but if I buy it, I want something that is the best quality, that's going to last a while, and that I'm going to, be able to maybe use for more than one application. I'm going to use your mountain bike as an example. The photos you sent me, I would have no guesses that thing was any more than 3 years old, because it looks fantastic. It looks very nice and light and sturdy. Disc brakes, a lot of stuff, a lot of very good stuff. So you obviously invested in a quality piece of equipment when you bought it years ago, and you're going to be able to reuse it, not just for, shredding down hills over logs, because I know that's what you're out doing on the weekends when you're not telling us about it, but you're also going to be able to complete this quest, this journey with it as well. So, and I say that because, and when I start talking about some gear, I said I hiked these trails, I still did it with an Army. It was a $40 Army backpack I bought at a surplus. But I did go out and buy quality, semi-quality. They weren't like $400 a set, trekking poles when I did it. What I also did there, what I'm saying though, is I bought a quality hammock because I wanted to, sleep well, but I didn't want to spend $150 on the tent that goes around the hammock. So I actually made one with following a YouTube video out of a tarp, because I knew this might be a one and done. And now granted, I used that on 2 nights on one trip that I went on 6 years ago at this point. So I'm very glad that I didn't buy the tent, but there's certain other things, my poles, my boots, my backpack, I've been able to use other times, but I'm not necessarily going out and camping, And I say that because there's a lot that goes with, when I say you in the ultra world, that it doesn't seem like it's a far spit from hiking and the reason I say that is there's some stuff that you might have that you're going to be able to repurpose and use. There's some stuff that's going to be bike specific that you might be nice to invest in to go get, and there's some stuff that, like you said, it's a cycling gear that you could buy but you really don't need. So what I figured I would start with there is I'm going to go through, and I've already read this list when I was doing the Gap Trail, so I'm going to read it very quickly. This is everything that Rob took on the trip, and then some of it we'll go through and start picking and talking what we need, what don't we need, what's nice, and then it's going to come all the way back around. I got information on different bikes. You name it, I got it, and I just want to go through it real quick, if that's okay.
You go for it, Rob. What have you got?
Okay.
As long as it's not as long a list as all the stuff you took to your first ultra in November.
Well, and here's how I pack when I do things, and we'll cover that at another point, Karen. And it's good to have it. I had it all in the hotel room. Did I take it on the course with me, Karen?
You did not. I have to say you were pretty good.
That's it. I'd rather, like that old Boy Scout, be prepared. I'd rather have it, and then the day of decide, that I don't need it, than to be saying, oh, I got this sitting at home. So what I did, and then I'm jumping right into a tip or trick. And we'll cover some of these terms later, panniers, trunks, and so forth. My recommendation is to break down what you're going to be taking, starting with a list. Like nothing's too small to not put on the list. As an example, right pannier. I have glasses, I have contacts. So, but even though I take those every time I go anywhere, I didn't want to forget them. So I wrote down glasses, 2 contact cases. Now, the reason why, and this is stupid, but why did I take 2 contact cases instead of contact case and solution? It was lighter to take 2, because I was going to be gone for 2 nights, 2 contact cases with the solution already in it than to take the bottle and the case separate. Q-tips, nip ease, body glide, toothbrush, extra contacts, in case I lose that set, floss stick, vitamin, nail set, watch charger, phone charger, lipstick charger. That's a lot of charging because I took a lot of electronics that I didn't need. An extra t-shirt, underwear, socks, hand towel. Now, before I get what's in the left pannier, the trunk, or the other stuff, I also want to say down below I had gray pants, E4E shirt, ball cap, Vivo watch, Leatherman. That was everything that I planned to pack in the right pannier. Now, what's different for Rob than is different for Karen that might be different for everyone else out there when you go to do this trip? If you listen to the list, I said an extra t-shirt, but I didn't have a t. Why wouldn't I have said a t-shirt, then an extra t-shirt, or 2 t-shirts? I had to commute down, so we got a ride down. So what I wore down, what I had to account for was going to be on my bike. So if you're going to, and we'll start this is later in the planning, if you're planning to go do part of your ride, from the point to your house, the first part of the trail to your house, and then leaving, let's say, the next day, you don't have to really worry about that. That's something else that you can have for consideration. But now I'm going to jump to my other pannier, my left pannier. Riding pants, gloves, bike hat, 2 pairs of bike shorts, 2 bike jerseys, bike shoes, 2 pairs of socks, sunglasses, clear glasses. So as you can see, I clearly put in one side of my bike all of my, when I say my daily wear, my daily stuff that, because once we get off the bike, I'm going to want to change into something comfortable. We're going to go out and get something to eat and so forth. So the one side was daily wear. The other side was bike stuff. So it was divided, and that also helped to balance it out. If you have 40 pounds of gear, you don't want to put 35 pounds on one side and 5 on the other. You actually feel the bike kind of leaning at one point or not there. So you can see, and the reason why I had all my bike stuff packed, when I was on the bike, I was going to be wearing one pair, and I was going to have an extra pair that way if it was dirty, sweaty, etc. And really the reason why I took 2, we were only riding 2 days. This is something that's going to be different, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. We can talk it through. We started one morning, had one overnight stay. The next day we were done by noon and getting picked up because we were only doing half the trail. If you're going to be doing an out and back, you might need either more gear, or you're going to have to consider, how am I going to clean these or launder them? Am I going to do it at the hotel? Am I going to be camping? Am I going to just pack everything? I'm going to be gone 10 days. I'm going to have 10 sets of clothes, and then just keep it all dirty. Next 2 parts of my thing, I had my bike bag and my trunk. Trunk, I put jacket, 920 XT, which is one watch, GoPro, because I thought I was going to video most of it, a bike mount, wrist mount, a GoPro charger, dry strips, those are little things in case your GoPro gets wet, my big tool set, trail maps, bike bag, tube, patch kit, tire levers, frame pump, CO2, and water bottles. All right, Karen, that's everything that I took on the trip. Some of it that I think is a necessity, some of it that's a duplication, and we'll go through it. What did you catch? What questions do you have? Let's get talking.
So I guess just listening to you, one of the things that's running through my head is something that you said right at the beginning of this, and that is that even though I'm not a cyclist, I've done a lot of like multi-day things over my life, right? So I used to be into mountaineering, and I would have to carry everything I needed for 2 weeks on my back.
Yep.
I've done like a lot of fast packing. So like I did the Laurel Highlands Trail in 2 days. And, so I'm kind of used to figuring out how to pack light. And one of the things that's running through my head listening to you is what I really enjoy about planning these kinds of trips, especially if they're going to be long, is how do I take as little as possible and not I hate taking anything with me that I'm not going to actually use or that I couldn't do without, right? And it's not like these trails are in the middle of nowhere. It looks to me like, just looking at the map, every 20 or 30 miles, you're going to hit somewhere where if you had forgotten something, you probably could pick it up.
Yes.
So So yes, I'm excited listening to you, thinking about laying out all of the things I think I might need way ahead of my trip, and then deciding on all of the things that I'm going to try and do without when it actually comes to the trip. And I
You
also
just said
don't
two
know
things
that.
before we get too far past it that I think now once again, it was going back to my by quality and multi-use. The
Mm,
reason whenever I said gray pants E4E shirt, okay, the gray pants in particular that I'm talking about were a pair of, when I say the lightweight, the hiking material pants,
mm,
and the reason and my wife, I don't care how many bad or jokes you want to make about me and being a dork, I wear these pants for hiking when I go on my fishing trip, whenever, I go on biking trips and things like this. And I have several pair of them, two or three. Why do I take these in particular? A, they have a built-in belt or a drawstring, so that way I don't have to worry about taking an extra piece and something that's going to weigh. B, they got the zippers in the middle, so they zip off into shorts because, so that way you have a pair of pants, a pair of shorts in one. C, they're lightweight. Additionally, since, the last part, D, is they're the wicking type of material, so if they were to get wet, they dry out real quickly. So
yeah.
and the
And
same
I
thing
think
is
that
what's one thing that covers like 9 different areas.
exactly. And I think that if you've got gear that you've used for a lot of different things, that you have your kind of go-to pieces, like you say,
Hmm.
things that you're like, yep, I wear these when I do these four things, and I know they'll also be good for this.
Yep.
It's that kind of multi-purpose thing, I
Yep.
guess. And I'm not sure that I would need to take additional clothing any more than you did, Rob, because like you
Hmm.
say, we will camp along the way, but we can also do laundry, so I
Hmm.
wouldn't imagine taking any more than maybe one extra cycling shirt and probably something that would be okay if I want to wander around Washington, D.C. And that would be it, and a change of underwear. Like, I'm not planning on taking anything else because let's face it, if I need another t shirt, I'll just buy one.
And that's you had said it, and that is exactly what else I was going to say. When you go through my list of things on I did take my GoPro and I took some video. Not enough to be worth it. I did take, when I say hard copy trail maps, they were just printed right from their website because a piece of paper weighs next to nothing, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's also one of the things I guess I didn't have is I did have a bike computer, which was one way of tracking it. I also had my Garmin watch, and if you heard me say in there, that was the 920 XT, as well as I said my Vivo watch. I had two watches that were GPS, a GPS mounted on my bike, and I had my cell phone. That's 4 GPSs. Really don't need that many. So especially where, in today's smartphone technology, 99% of the trail where you're going to be on will be in cell service. So you don't really need any of that other stuff. And as you said, if you have any problems, you can pull up your phone. You're going to be able to find something nearby, whether it's buying a shirt, getting something to eat. And that's why if you look on, when you heard me talk through all that stuff, I did pack maybe a couple of like snack bars, like a Lara bar or a UCAN bar and so forth. But and you'll see I said 2 water bottles, but I did not include, like, in my camping gear. I have a little stove. I have, a little pot to to boil or sterilize water or cook in. I also have a pump, so you can pump out of a stream and it gets, like some of the little dirty critters out of it. I didn't take any of that because we were going to be staying at a hotel, and we're going through so many towns that water's readily available. Like you said, the biggest stretch might be maybe a half hour between a couple of those towns. And in
yeah.
that case, you might want to stop and take a break anyways. So
And I think
you
that
really don't
this
have
is
to
where
pack all that extra stuff.
Right. And I think this is where timing, the time of year to go is important too, just like if you're going on a long hike. So, we're planning on going towards the end of September, early October. So we want to camp, but we don't need a winter tent. I don't need a double down sleeping bag in October. Quite frankly, if we have a day that's that cold, we'll stay in a hotel. So, I don't have to pack really heavy duty winter gear. And also, it's not the middle of summer, so it's not going to be 95 degrees, and we're not going to be drinking a gallon of water every hour. So, we don't have to carry as much of that stuff. So, just thinking about when to time it so that we can be a little bit more lightweight in terms of what we carry, I think is important as well.
Right. Now, let's talk bikes real quick, and then we'll get back into some of this other gear. And that is, you said you already have yours. And quickly, I sent you a link and just said, something like this, and then you bought it and went kind of crazy. You want to talk about what you have thus far, or do you want to go
Yes.
through some of the differences and things out there?
No, let's talk about what I have because, like I say, what I wanted to do was for me, like me and Lloyd, we're both in a slightly different situation. Like Lloyd commutes to work on his bike. He's like more of a cyclist than me. So for
Okay.
me, I just wanted to think, what is the absolute minimum that I need to do this trip? And I'm just going to assume at this point that I never want to ride my bike again, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
what can I reuse and repurpose, and what do I absolutely have to have? So I have my bike, which, like I say, is over 20 years old, but hardly used. So I took it up to the bike shop and they replaced all of the cables and they put a new chain on it and they oiled and lubed and did whatever else they do. It looks as good as new and it's perfectly fine. The other thing I knew I would need is a way of just carrying some gear. I'm not going to ride my bike with my backpack on. So
Hmm.
even I know that that would not be a great plan. So I also knew that I needed to have some idea of how I was going to carry stuff. And I wanted to get that early because then I can start thinking about how much space I actually have, and then that leads me down the whole planning what else I might need for the rest of the trip. So you suggested like I don't even know what you call it, a rack thing that you attach to the back, and then the two pannion things, and then a little bit that sits on the top. This is in layman's terms.
Hmm.
And it looks to me like those three bags together are about the same size as my backpack that I would take on, like, or that I took on the Laurel Highlands trip, actually, that I did in 2 or 3 days. So I'm thinking I can carry as much stuff in those as I would carry in a backpack for like a 3-day hiking trip.
Right. Yes. Now, for everyone out there who doesn't know what Karen's talking about, I'm going to dig a little deeper. I'm going to, and at this point, I just do want to interject. I had talked to John, and I think what we're going to do is to accompany this show, we're going to put up a blog. I've given John a lot of the resources that I've sent Karen and that I've collected through the time and through the years. Photos of some bikes, photos of, some parts of bikes that we're going to be discussing. And there should be 2 or 3 other links. I don't know if he's going to put them as just links or documents or put them in like a blog post. But when I say you can follow along, so if I thought, say, a cross bike or a tri bike or I guess I wouldn't say a tri bike, but like a mountain bike, you'll get an idea of what each one is like if you don't know. Additionally, you'll see some links directly to not necessarily the gear that I own, but if I talk about a lobster glove versus other gloves, that way you can quickly look at and get a reference. Oh, that's what that is. So Karen,
Yeah.
do you know offhand quickly what kind of bike Lloyd has?
I don't. Oh, can I just say one more thing before we get on to Lloyd? So just so
Yeah.
that people know, so all up, I've spent like around $300 on.
Oh,
There's this cool little bike shop up the street. They did all of that work for me. I brought the pinions and the rack, so all up about $300.
yeah.
So I'll probably
Oh, we're
spend
going
a
to talk a
little.
lot more about your bike. I was just curious offhand
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
knew,
yeah.
based
Just
off the
wanted people
photos
to
I
know
sent you,
I
what does he have a mountain bike or a cross or a
He
hybrid or?
he had a mountain bike that got stolen. So he brought a road bike that
Okay.
he commutes to work on. So it's one of those bikes with the really skinny little tires
Okay.
and the handlebars that curl around. That's a road bike, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna, and I will make this part quick. I will go through the two or not two, maybe 4 or 5 different types of bikes that are out there. Which ones may or may not be appropriate. You can use, spoiler, any bike on this trail and you should be fine with it. Okay. So what the first and the kind of the order that I was going to go in, I'm going to say is going to be I don't want to say easiest, the fastest, I should say, to the slowest. So Lloyd's bike, you just said road bike, telltale signs of a road bike, skinny tires, usually what's like you say, the bars that curl around then come back down. Those are called drop bars. That is going to be the quote fastest because you have less resistance because you're going to have a skinnier tire on it. Okay. The next variation, and we'll put up I do have a photo. Karen, that's the black bike that says Fuji on it that I sent you, is going to be
Mm-hmm.
what's called a cyclocross or a cross bike. The main difference between a cyclocross bike and a road bike is a cyclocross is going to have a little wider tire, so they're still skinny by comparison. They're like little baby mountain bike tires. Okay, so they still have some tread where a road bike's usually going to have like a flat no tread to it. Okay, and cyclocross cyclocross things, particularly the one I have, they're going to have some of the bolt points. Some of them are called bolts, some are called braze-ons, depending on where they are. That's where I sent you the one photo, and we'll put it up at the show. That there looks like there's a hole in my frame, the same that you have, that the rack actually screwed right into. These bikes are made to have fenders added or racks added for applications that like we're talking about. The next type, and this is what I used whenever I went on the trail, was a hybrid. They're sometimes referred to as a flat bar road bike. So you're going to get the same basic frame, but instead of having the handlebars that curl down, you're going to have just a flat bar across the top, flat handlebars. The tires on those are going to be about the same width as what's on a cyclocross bike, but once again, they're going to be smooth, not have any real tread or traction to them. Mountain bike is going to be the next one. That's what you have. Now, I don't know, because they got yours all tuned up. My friend Brian, he rode his mountain bike whenever we went on there. And like you're saying about, the, bike and older and so forth. Brian's around my age, and we're, mid to late 30s, and his mountain bike is the one that he bought when he was in high school, maybe junior high. So and he's a much faster, better cyclist than I am. So once again, an older piece of equipment that's quality is still going to get you there. Now, the only thing is he did swap his out, and instead of having like real knobby tires, he put slick ones on because we knew we weren't going to need the traction, and it gave him.
They put like something in between on mine, so they had to replace the tires and the inner tubes as well because they were just too old and they were starting to split. So they put a tire on that's still kind of wide to look at, right? But it's not super knobby. It's not like you're going to be off-road on a mountain bike.
Yeah, it's not like an all-terrain tire for like a car. It's going to be a little smoother. It's give you a little. But what was really nice that Brian was taking advantage of, and you will notice this, is the tire. When I say it's not only wider, but it's a little. When I say thicker, I'll just say up and down. You get a lot more cushioning on that whenever you're out riding. So it's like having shocks built in just by having that.
He also said he put one on there too that was a little bit more puncture resistant. He said it's just like a little bit. He said it weighed slightly more. He was talking about like half an ounce. I don't think I'm really going to worry about that. So yeah, he said it would be a little bit more resistant if you rode over anything super sharp. So.
Yeah. The last type of bike I want to say, and this is the first type of bike that I owned years ago, and when I say it, it's called the Cruiser. The Cruiser is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. If you think of a Cadillac car versus a Porsche, a Cadillac's going to be real soft and have a nice ride to it, but it's going to be heavy. And that's what the Cruiser is. Big 2-inch wide tires, only has 7 gears. I rode a lot of miles on the Cruiser that I had, but the fact of the matter is it's not necessarily gonna. Could you go out and do a day trip like if Karen said, hey, I have it and I want to go do a 20-30 mile trip on it, you can, but it's not something that you're going to go out and do 60 miles day after day after day for to ride to DC and back. Could you? Yes, but it's such a heavier bike that you're not really gonna enjoy what you're doing out there. So Karen, I already know that some of your gear. We're gonna get back to what you got and what you've had added and so forth. Now my question real quick is on Lloyd's road bike. A couple of the things I was going through here. I talked about the little bolt holes, and so we're gonna put a photo of that up. Does his have those on there?
He does, but he's actually going to get another bike. So
Okay.
his road bike, he's had his road bike for about 10 years or so.
Mhm.
And there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. It's just old and it's tired, and I've wanted to get him another bike for a long time. And so this is a good excuse to just kind of bite the bullet and do that.
Mhm.
And the guy at the bike shop they're actually, Lloyd's really tall, just as an aside, he's 6'7". So the guy at the bike shop was really, really helpful. And they're getting did you say it was called a crossover bike?
Yes. Cyclocross or cross, yes.
Yeah, so they're getting him a frame in that they're going to put together just for him to try out. Now, the one that they're getting in is a really expensive bike. It's like a $3,500 bike, and we're not paying that much for his one. But it's going to be exactly the same setup as like a $1,500 bike that they could then get built for him. So he's going to try that out, and it does have the straight handlebars like mine, that kind of stuff. But they also said that it would have a handlebar where he could have like 2 different positions. And they were thinking that that would be useful if you're cycling day in and day out to be able to kind of move around.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I'm going to talk road bike and then back to what you're saying. Road bike, that's why those bars curve back around, is they give you essentially 3 different hand positions. You can hold your hands dead center, like your grip, put your hands almost touching. You could hold them out on the shifters or on the brakes, which are kind of like if you turn your, just 90 degrees, turn your hands, you have that. And then you also have the drop where you lean down into it. Now, if you look on the photos that will accompany this and some of the ones I've sent you, you'll see what on my flat bar bike, the gray Trek, it has, I always call them my antlers. They're the just bar ends. They basically just, they come 90 degrees off the end they stick out. That way you can have an extra hand position. So if they're putting a set of flat bars on for Lloyd, that's most likely what they're going to end up doing is putting bar ends on it. Because you will actually see, and on that gray bike, I had used it in the triathlon once, I actually had a set of little clip-on aero bars. They were in the center, so that way I can lean forward and kind of like lay into it. I took those off before we went on the ride because it wasn't going to be, that's something you do for a bike race, something that's there for an hour. That is not something that is sustainable for 4 days.
Mm-hmm. And like my bike, because it's a mountain bike, it's got like front shocks on it. And they were saying to Lloyd that, I mean, not only is that not going to be necessary for this trip, they said the front forks on this bike that they're looking at for him is made of carbon fiber, and that will absorb, like some of the bounce or some shock from this. So
it absorbs a lot of the vibrations, and it'll help make the bike lighter for him. And that's something where you would never go on and swap out the ones you have on there. That's an unnecessary precaution and money you don't need to spend. But yeah, these newer bikes, they usually come with it for weight and for, when I say road dampening, it takes some of the vibration out of it and makes it more comfortable.
That's what they called it. Yeah, road dampening. That was it.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's where he's at. So it's not that he couldn't probably do this trip on his road bike. It's just that it's a little bit like when we did a whole bunch of work on the house, or when we first, it's nice to kind of, when you've got a big project, it's almost worth investing in something that he'll actually get a lot of use out afterwards as well.
Right.
And we can just use.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.